Hi everyone, my name is Bart Smikla and I will be our host for today's meeting. Let's start with some introductions. Is there anybody who would like to introduce, is new here and would like to introduce themselves to us? Of course, the thing which I'm always forgetting, is there anybody who would like to do notes?
I can do notes. Justin.
Thank you, Justin.
Please add your name to our attendees list. And I think we should start with the billing review, as the last meeting was like more than a 1.5 months ago.
I can do a couple of introductions too. That's still good, unless we want to do the billing review.
No, don't worry.
Okay. I'm Mark Rossetti, and I'm here with Ernest Wong and Claudiu Bolu. And I'm one of the co-chairs for SIG Windows, and Ernest works with me at Microsoft, and we work with Claudiu from Cloudbase, and we're here to get more involved with working with this working group, specifically with some goals around potentially onboarding some Azure resources into this group's kind of purview, and also getting some of the Windows test passes easier to maintain with less kind of manual intervention.
Hi Mark, it's good to see you here. Sorry, I didn't saw your raised hand before.
No problem.
Anybody else?
So yeah, I'm Ernest. I'm also from Microsoft, as Mark mentioned, and looking forward to getting more involved in this working group.
Hello, Ernest. It's good to see you too here.
I think I introduced myself before. Daniel Roth from SAP. I usually hang out with Aaron in the test infra calls.
Good to see you here too. Okay, so I think that we can jump into the billing report. I will share my screen. I'm not sure if we want to cross-check it. I don't know if, for example, Justin has some more data or not, but I'm not sure if it's necessary at this point. The differences were not huge. My time frame, which I've put, is from the last call, which was the July 22nd. And from that time, we've spent like almost $200,000. And actually, I'm not sure. It looks like a pattern to me. Most of these costs, it looks like for Compute Engine, of course, and cloud storage, what we expect. I don't see any kind of events, but maybe Aaron.
So I know I can speak to two things. So the majority of this comes from the K8s Artifacts project, which is the project that serves k8s.gcr.io. So what you're seeing is like weekly traffic of various people or CI systems pulling down artifacts from k8s.gcr.io. That's why it's got that pattern. What I'm not super aware of, like, I guess I don't understand why there's so much compute coming from a project that I believe to be solely about serving images. But I haven't looked too deeply into it. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just going to say, if we go to the next, I think it's the next page, we see a GCE breakdown, and you'll see that GCE includes some bandwidth and some compute. I do think there is a question as why there is so much compute, but it may be that it's by project that it's okay. So yes, now you can drill down by project and get more insight, I think.
Okay. That would be good to know. But like I said, I haven't looked too deeply at it. I'm kind of going off the fact that neither Linus nor Tim freaked out about it when they saw what the costs were. But it would be worth digging into. The other thing that is not necessarily reflected on this chart, and it's less clear until you filter out the artifacts project, is over the last month and a half, we've migrated most of the merge blocking and release blocking jobs for Kubernetes over to the community build cluster. So we've definitely seen some increased traffic. The really big hump that you see in the last like 2 or 3 weeks was migrating over the 100 node clusters that are stood up for every single pull request for the scalability jobs. So I know like last time Tim looked at it, it was like ballpark $1 million a year for the artifact stuff, and CI at the moment is ballpark 500,000 a year. If I just sort of took like the last 14 days and averaged that down. So that's where we're at with that. I am still kind of wary of costs and stuff here, because like the jobs that have been moved over thus far are 200 something out of 1,500 something. So there are there are many jobs that still run over in the Google.com build cluster. I think we're probably going to need to spend some time evaluating which of those jobs are really necessary. And it could be we want to look at further ways of optimizing the cost of the existing jobs. I know we have a number of jobs that kind of hog as much CPU as they can, which it's great that we have cluster auto scaling to deal with this, but could we pack things a little bit better at all somehow? So that's what I know of from a billing perspective. Any questions?
Yeah, exactly. Any questions? I don't have any questions. Actually, it looks kind of as I expected to.
Okay.
Okay, so let's jump further. Maybe I will give a few updates. There was not a lot going on from my side. I actually helped a little bit with 1 or 2 jobs, moving 1 or 2 jobs. And the only maybe a little bit bigger thing is that the DNS automation is kind of successfully working right now using Pro. So whenever there is some DNS update, it's automated currently. I was helping with the Slack infrastructure a little bit. We have the new tool deployed lately, and yeah, that's my update at this point. How the things are going with Pro? What actually is what is the next step we need to do?
So my goal is to first finish migrating over all of the release blocking and merge blocking jobs. The jobs that can't yet be migrated over are jobs that write to GCS buckets that can't be written to by non-Google.com service accounts. So we need to collaborate with release engineering to migrate from, I think it's the Kubernetes release bucket, to a K8s release bucket, which is owned by K8s Infra. I think it's just going to take time, and my bandwidth has been really, really low lately. So if somebody was interested in picking that up, they could. It would involve some knowledge of how and why builds are dumped into the GCS buckets, but I think it would be doable. I unfortunately don't have a ton of time to describe the work involved. And it would be really helpful if that was somebody who knew how to contact the release engineering team or had a good rapport with the release engineering team, because this is largely about release engineering artifacts.
I think I'm the person who has that kind of that, and I can definitely and have will to help. But the problem is for the next 2 weeks I will be on PTO without electronic devices. That's our goal with my wife. But after that, I will definitely be able to and willing to help from that side.
Okay, that sounds healthy. I may free up some bandwidth during that time, but if not, I'll that would be super appreciated. Then I feel like the next step would be, well, there are 1,300 other jobs to consider.
Yeah.
I think I would like to get the CI Signal team more empowered to operate and maintain this stuff. So one of the fun adventures I went through last week was upgrading the cluster from 114 to 115. I'd like to upgrade it from 115 to 116 if I can to get back within the community support window. It raises the question for me of who's in charge of migrating or like upgrading clusters for the rest of our infrastructure. It's not, I think we have them all set to auto upgrade, but I personally haven't gone and checked them all. I did the build cluster at a time and place of my choosing, so I could keep an eye on it. So yeah, like I had mentioned, it'd be great for the CI Signal folks to be able to like create and save log searches, but I think I'd really like the pool of people who can like upgrade the cluster or deploy new node pools or whatever to be not me. So there's that. Like I said, in terms of cost optimization, it would be cool to figure out what more we could do to bin pack things more tightly. I have a suspicion that our workloads are pretty I/O bound. And so I have an open issue about ways we could increase the size of either our persistent disks or our VMs to get us more I/O. But thus far, the tweaking and tuning that we've done hasn't had much effect. That's all I can think of for now with regard to Prow. For the build cluster, I feel like, again, the most value for us comes from getting the CI jobs running in community infrastructure, so that like the node team, for example, right? Like they couldn't figure out why node jobs were failing, and they couldn't like get access to the projects to see all the logs they needed to see what was happening back in April. And so I want to make sure like we have that in place first. Migrating prow.k8s.io from one cluster to another, I'm not sure how to do that in a non-disruptive way. That's going to be a slightly heavier lift. It's something we could probably talk about with the Prow folks to see what they think, and if it's feasible to try doing something like that, early in the release cycle or after the release is out the door or something. Okay, that's really all I have about Prow.
Yeah. At least I have some knowledge where to poke after I will be back from PTO. Sounds good. As I don't see any updates more at this point, any questions about this? Any suggestions? Maybe updates? So I don't see any, so let's jump into the open discussion. There is only one item, and I think
I can talk about it, since all those pull requests are authored by me. It's gonna be a very long point, so I'll just get started. So I've been working a lot on the Kubernetes E2E test images, also created the Agnost image and centralized a couple dozen images into it. And one of our goals was to have official Windows support for every E2E test image merged in in Kubernetes, which basically are, I think, the last two pull requests from that list. A little while ago, Ben Elder suggested that ideally we wouldn't need Windows build nodes in order to build Windows images. I don't know if you know, but at this moment, the image promoter and image builder currently builds the Kubernetes E2E test images. And for the Windows images, it uses a couple of remote Windows Docker nodes in Azure, supported by Microsoft. And basically, the idea was to, hey, just don't. And that's something I've been working on for the past few weeks. I actually have a pull request for that, which is this one. Pasting in chat right now. And I think Aaron also suggested something like this a few weeks ago, that we should use community-owned infra for all the image building. So basically, I've managed to build all the images with that pull request. Basically, the pull request switches the usage from Docker build to Docker build X, which can also build Windows images with some caveats. I'll get into them shortly after. But just so you know, I've successfully built all the images with build X. And I've also run a full conformance run with for the Windows images, and all the tests passed. So that's the good news. The second good news is that with the current implementation that I've sent, we no longer have to rely on any Windows build nodes ever. That also includes any future Windows OS versions, because at the moment we use basically 1909 Windows Server nodes for building 1909 container images. Basically, you cannot build for a newer OS. Basically, you cannot build Windows images for a newer OS than you are on. But BuildX basically eliminates that entirely. You can just use a Linux node to build those as well. But there are two important decisions that you will have to agree on. Currently, the main idea is that, yeah, BuildX is a good idea, let's go with that, but we never got any formal agreement on those following 2 points. First of all, indeed, we do not need the Windows build nodes anymore, but there are a few things that needs to be run on a Windows node. And for that, I basically created 2 helper images, which are currently hosted on E2E team BusyBox helper and E2E team PowerShell helper, which are those. The Docker files for those images are also included in the pull request if anyone wants to build them for any reason. And basically, we won't change those images ever. Basically, they're just going to be there. And basically, the image promoter will just pull a couple of files and things that it needs from there. More specifically, the BusyBox expanded things and PowerShell and all its preparations from those images. And if they are going to change ever, of course, it's going to be a different version, so it won't affect any current builds. That is the first thing the community will have to agree on, that the image promoter will pull from those images some bits. Minor bits, but still. And the second one, a few months ago, we basically switched the base images for the Windows images from server core to nano server. The reason is quite simple. The nano server images are at least 10 times smaller than the server core images. For example, even compressed server core images like 2 gigabytes in size, while a nano server image is like 200 megabytes at most. So it really helps a lot when building, and of course it will also help a lot BuildX even more than that, especially because we have to build for multiple OS versions. Currently 1809, 1903, 1909, and 2004 currently. So basically, the image promoter will not have to pull 8 gigabytes of images every job. So that is one dependency we are gonna need to merge first. I think that's pretty much non-controversial. We've also had a lot of test passes green for weeks or months on Nano server using those images, so that's pretty good. But the idea about the Nano server image is that it doesn't have all the requirements we need. For some images, we actually need some DLLs, which can be found in the server core. And the last proposition is to have one additional periodic job. We were thinking something like once per month to run, which basically pulls those server core images just once and just saves those dependencies and DLLs into a Scratch Linux image and just store that. And then the image builder will just pull those dependencies from that cache. Basically, we don't want to pull the server core images at all, and just have those dependencies saved somewhere in a cache, which will be used by the image promoter. So yeah, those are the main two things: the external dependencies on the BusyBox helper and the PowerShell helper, and this DLL cache. So those are the things we kind of need to agree on. All of this has already been included in the pull request. The only thing that I have to do is propose that pro job that builds that cache image. But that's it.
So the two E2E team images.
Of course, we can also give you access to those registry if you have to manage them in any way or any capacity. I think that's perfectly fine. It's currently owned by SIG Windows.
Right. I'm just thinking of it from the perspective of reproducibility. So, is the
I included the Docker files in the pull request as well. If anyone ever needs to build those images, they can do so. Of course, they're going to need Windows nodes for that.
Okay.
But they can build their own images if needed. But ideally, there will no longer be any case for that.
Okay. I definitely appreciate the thorough walkthrough of all this. It sounds reasonable to me. I just I have not had enough time to prepare for this to look into all the details. And I'd also like to get Ben's eyes on this, since I think he proposed BuildX as the path forward. But this sounds reasonable. Just a point on terminology. You kept saying image promoter, but I think what we're talking about here is the image builder.
Yeah.
The jobs that run in Google Cloud Build.
Yeah.
I think being able to have the Google Cloud Build job be fully self-contained instead of kind of calling out to external Windows server nodes sounds great. So this seems reasonable. I can't give you a hard yes or hard no right now. But it's on the radar, and we'll get to it as I have bandwidth.
Yeah. At the very least, the we could at least go forward with the non-controversial stuff. Is the nano server pull request, which is the second in the list. We basically decided that it's good, it works. We had full test passes with nano server based images, and the buildx pull request depends on that pull request.
Okay,
it's a fairly straightforward pull request as well.
89425, is that the safer? Is that the one you're talking about, or is it the
the 4251? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Also,
I'll get that first.
While we have folks here, it's like I posted in the chat too, but I'll reiterate, is like, please let us know if there's any clarification we can provide around all of this. We understand Windows Server containers work quite a bit differently than Linux, and that a lot of people who are primarily work with Linux containers may not be or aren't familiar with these. And I think some of the things that we can help the most with is probably provide any clarifications for reviewers around why some of this is necessary, the different behaviors, or any other questions you have.
Yeah, I appreciate you're all here. I guess I'm just trying to say, like, I'm not ramped up enough to be able to take advantage of your time right now, though I do really appreciate it. So I think as long as y'all are lurking in Slack, Kate's in for SIG testing or wherever, we'll reach out if we have questions.
Yeah, please do. I'm available anytime to answer those questions.
Okay. I think your proposal for like the cache image also sounds reasonable to me.
The idea of the cache to be built monthly is because Microsoft releases new container images every month or so.
Uh-huh.
So it would be a good idea to always have fresh images and fresh DLLs and dependencies to use when building images, right?
I guess. I mean, help me understand why we need the complexity of the cache in the first place. I get that 5 gigs is large, but in theory, most of this is going to be running in CI, where network is less of an issue, right? Yeah, I guess, like, what's the concern? Is it
basically the server core images are large. As I mentioned, they're at least 2 gigabytes in size, and it takes a lot to download and decompress. That is the main concern. Basically, we are currently building for 3 different OS versions of Windows, and we are planning to introduce the 4th one because that is our support plan for the moment, as far as I know. And that adds a lot of execution time to the image builder job, and it most likely could end up in timeouts and stuff like that. While if you just have a cache, that cache basically is like 2 or 3 megabytes in size or something like that. It doesn't affect the building job at all in terms of execution time. Additionally, and this might just be me, but while I was working on this, it looked to me that Docker buildx tended to always repull the Windows images over and over and over and over again.
Right.
Since we build so many images, that seemed really unfeasible to me.
So, I mean, like, yeah, in general, the idea of caching sounds great. Caching down to megabytes also sounds good. I'm just trying to apply, I guess, the XKCD rule of thumb here. So it looks like, I think that's the image building job we're concerned would be affected, right? The one that builds the E2E test images. And it looks like it's ballpark 40 to 50 minutes right now. What kind of increase are you talking about?
From my experience, just pulling the image, which on a node which already is in Azure, was taking something like 20 minutes.
Okay.
That also includes decompression, and just for one image, one Windows image, and you have to consider that 3 of them. One
Yep.
for 1809, 1903, and 1909, and planning another one.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, caching sounds like it would be helpful there. I think, yeah, I think we're just going to have to see what this does to image build times in general. And if we find that something becomes unreasonable, we'll have to figure out what we want to do about that. But everything you've proposed sounds reasonable to me. I think it's just a matter of getting Ben and maybe folks from the release engineering team to just kind of dig into the details and make sure this all looks good.
I'll also provide some of the motivations from our end for wanting to do this is that a lot of times the PRs will go in and update the test images in Kubernetes, like the image references in the E2E test. And then all of the Windows tests that use those images will fail for a couple of, well, until somebody from SIG Windows goes in and runs this process manually and pushes new image tags to match what was updated.
Right.
Into the infra. So we're hoping that this can help clean up our test signal a lot too. And we will definitely reach out to SIG Release about that. I think they would be happy to help see this.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Like I'm in favor of trying to get us, as close to upstream as possible, get signal as soon as possible. Yeah, I think the main compromise we're making at the moment, just in light of what we saw with what we saw back in July, where like everything kind of locked up because we had like a ridiculous amount of resource usage from a lot of CI jobs, is we're just trying to take a more prudent look at like what we're spending our resources on and why. So that's part of where the like I can't give like hard answers off the top of my head. I think we just need to look into the details, but this all sounds super reasonable to me.
I'll just throw one more thing on there, and this is more for the SIG release team as well. But so in 1.18 and in 1.19, we've had Windows PRs, or we've had PRs go in between RCs that have completely broken Windows functionality. And we are hoping that with this work, since we won't have to worry about having to, like a manual step, unblock test passes, to get some PR at least informing jobs out hopefully soon to help do this, or so that we don't have this again for 120.
Okay, yeah, I hear that. That's where like...
Yeah, I didn't mean to put pressure on you. I just wanted to provide the full context, or like our motivations for doing this. So
I
totally understand everything.
Hear that motivation in that context. I think there's some question of like we don't really have pre-submit tests for every single architecture supported by Kubernetes, right? We kind of have it just for Linux AMD 64. So I think it's kind of an open question whether we think we have sufficiently solved our pre-submit resource usage issues to the point where we want to like open that back up, or if we think we need to find a more prudent, focused way to get good, clean signal for things that have merged. So I know like finding out something broken post-submit isn't ideal, but we do this for a number of other things. But I hear you loud and clear, and I think this is a good step forward in general. Yeah, I would say Kate's Infra is largely concerned with is the project fully in control of all of its infrastructure? And so the fact that we have to depend on some mysterious Azure nodes out there somewhere, we'd be just as concerned about it if we had to depend on some mysterious GCE nodes that are running in somebody's personal Google Cloud project or whatever, right? We're just trying to make sure that the community has the capacity to rebuild from scratch if it needed to, and that it could run the infrastructure necessary to host, to do the building and to do the hosting. And I think everything Claudiu's talked about here moves us toward that goal.
Yeah, and that's also why I mentioned at the beginning potentially onboarding some Azure resources into the kind of governance of this group. We have some subscriptions, which I believe are the equivalent of projects in Google Cloud that Locky from Microsoft maintains that are dedicated to the CNCF, the build kind of up to through CNCF kind of budgeting on our end, and the resources that we use to run our periodic jobs are running on there, as well as the images that we're currently building these on, and a number of other resources for Cluster API and CAPZ. Since I guess we weren't aware of this kind of working group and the idea, the desire to have governance over these test infrastructure resources. So we'd be more than happy to work towards onboarding some of those as well.
Okay. I don't have a solid answer for you on what onboarding for that would look like, but I hear that and appreciate that for sure. And I think Bart and Dims and I can figure out what the appropriate path forward is there.
Yeah, we understand these are all kind of long-term aspirations. So.
Yep, totally. Cool.
Any questions, suggestions to this topic? I don't hear any. And that was the last thing in the agenda. And the one thing which I would like to add is, as Nikita is not here, she asked us yesterday about prepare the annual report from our working group. And she asked us also to involve the community. So if anybody would like to kind of give some feedback or informations and help us kind of prepare this document, feel free to do so. I'm putting the link with the template, which we will be using and preparing soon. And everybody is welcome to join and help this effort. And okay, yeah, sure.
I'm going to try and turn that into an actual report today, and I'll send a link out to the mailing list and post it in Slack when I've done so.
Sounds great.
Just an FYI, the document is not public. I need to request access if I want to see what's in there.
It may be restricted to leads, and I'm not sure if there is or is not a good reason for that. So I don't want to just give access until I've asked.
Yeah, I didn't know. Sorry about that. So I will also make sure and maybe put some information in the Slack channel. Actually, I think that maybe if Aaron would start and prepare something, we can work from that point. What do you think, Aaron? Yeah.
Yep, that's my plan. I'll post as soon as I have something that's workable.
Perfect. Sounds good to me. Okay, any other topics, questions, suggestions? We can start. I don't see it. Aaron, I think you're muted. You want?
Oh, I went on mute. Sorry about that. Is Justin still here? I noticed there are a bunch of PRs against the Kate's repo from Justin that have been sitting there, and I wasn't sure if there's anything we needed to do to help unblock you, or if you're blocked, or what the story is there.
I don't feel blocked, I am going to work on, actually I can ask a question. So I'm going to work on getting the binary artifact promoter to be automated in the same way as the image promoter. I was waiting on the image promoter being done and dusted. Is it finished? Are we good at this point? Do we have capacity to take on the next challenge?
We're almost there, I guess. You can start on it. So the thing for me is the image promoter is not running in K8s Infra clusters. It's still running over in a Google.com cluster. That's just because we didn't have K8s Infra clusters at the time. So I kind of want to see it moved over before you just use that as your copy paste template to stamp. But otherwise, I think you're good to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, most of the PRs that I have opened are promoting the binary artifacts, which I think we can merge. I am basically documenting the procedure which will be automated, but is currently being run manually.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. As I don't see any other topics, I would like to propose moving the board, going through the board for the next meeting, because there is not a lot of us today, and maybe that would be kind of better with more people, and maybe give us back the 50 minutes today. Or if any topics, suggestions, questions are still present, we can.
I'll take the 15 minutes, thanks.
Okay, so thank you all for being here. Thank you, Justin, for taking notes. And I won't be there in the next meeting, but see you in another one. Thank you.
Great.
Have a great day.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your time without devices, Bart.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.